How important is this car to Aston Martin? Well, they're not about to tell us if it's life and death, but put it this way. The famous old mark has been saved by brilliant new models several times in the past. For instance, in the 1950s by the DB2 and in the 1990s by the DB7. If the DBX turns out to be good, it could well join those cars on that list. There's plenty in here that existing Aston Martin owners will be familiar with. The shape of this part of the dashboard, for instance, is very familiar Aston Martin stuff, as is the perforated leather, some of the switch gear as well. What's not very typically Aston Martin is the sense of space in here and the seating position. I'm upright and I'm up high. It's a very airy cockpit, spacious as well. I'm 6 foot tall, and in my comfortable driving position, there's plenty of space behind me for me. So it's a big, roomy cockpit.
The DBX is Aston Martin's first foray into the enormously lucrative luxury SUV segment. Given how popular these cars are with buyers, Aston Martin cannot afford not to be in this category. Unlike most of its rivals, the DBX sits on its own dedicated platform. That means the Aston engineers have had real freedom to make the car drive exactly how they want it to. It also means the DBX can be very long in the wheelbase, but short in overall length. That's great both for handling and aesthetics.
Having said that, this car does still need to be exceptionally good to drive, because the best luxury SUVs are exactly that. So, how does this thing stack up once you get rolling then? Cars like these, very high-end, very expensive luxury SUVs, they come loaded with very clever chassis hardware. They've all got it, and this DBX has it all as well. So it's got air springs with variable ride height and variable spring rate.
The DBX is built in a new factory in South Wales in the UK. The engine is the same Mercedes AMG sourced 4-litre V8 that powers the Vantage sports car. With 2 turbochargers, it produces 550 horsepower and 700 Nm of torque. The all-aluminium DBX weighs 2,245 kilograms, and with 4-wheel drive, it'll hit 100 km per hour in 4.5 seconds and top out at 291 km per hour.
And it's got a 4-wheel drive system that can vector torque front and back and then across the rear axle as well. And it's got active anti-roll bars, which can decouple so that you get either a very comfortable, very fluid ride or very taut body control. In GT mode then, the car will lean just a little bit in corners. However, if we switch into Sport or Sport Plus, those active anti-roll bars clamp down and then the car almost doesn't roll at all. And that's where you get that freakish agility, that astonishing response that you also get from the very best luxury SUVs, this car's rivals. They all do it. Is it fun to drive? That's a different question, really. I don't think it's fun to drive the way Aston Martin's more conventional sports cars are, but it's incredibly competent when you start flinging it around some of these twisting roads. It's also enormously fast. We've got bundles of power and torque from this twin-turbo V8, which, by the way, sounds fantastic. And it's a really strong engine that pulls and pulls so hard, actually. It's got masses of performance. Great engine with loads of power and torque, good soundtrack, bundles of grip. It's comfortable when you want it to be, sporty and agile when you want it to be those things. It's just a very, very impressive car. So we know this car doesn't need to be massively capable in the rough stuff, because if you really want to do serious off-roading, you're not going to buy an Aston Martin DBX to do it. But driving around on this off-road course, it's pretty clear that this will do everything that the typical Aston DBX owner will need it to do. Muddy gravel tracks, snowy roads, wet fields, it'll do all of that, no problem whatsoever. So this car doesn't have very, very knobbly tyres. It doesn't have that mechanical hardware for going off-road that certain other vehicles do. However, it does have a couple of off-road driving modes, and because the car has air springs, they can raise the ride height. If you go into terrain, you raise the ride height by 20 millimeters. Go into terrain plus, you raise the ride height by 45 millimeters, and that gives you the ground clearance that you need to go off-road. In those modes, the car also adjusts its throttle calibration, its gear shift strategy to better suit the demands of off-roading. I keep having to remind myself that this is the same car that I was driving a few moments ago on that sort of replicated mountain road where it was agile and responsive and sharp in its handling, and now I'm driving it off-road on really muddy tracks on these rutted gravel roads, and it's so competent. I knew it would do a little bit of off-roading. I had no idea this Aston Martin DBX would be quite this capable in the rough stuff. This slope is so steep that as we crest it now, I can't see the road in front of me. It's just bonnet. And I'm not even braking now because the car has hill descent control. So my foot, my right leg, and my left leg for that matter, they're both off the brake pedal, and the car is just managing its own descent. Ooh, that's really spooky.
New Zealand deliveries begin in Q4 2020. The DBX is priced at $330,000 in New Zealand. The DBX will sell because it's an Aston Martin, because it's an SUV and they're just so popular these days, but also because it's so much better looking than a Bentley Bentayga. The DBX is a supremely impressive machine. It's great to drive, it's fast, it looks striking, and it has a huge spread of ability. But it does have its flaws. The ride is firmer and more connected than Bentley Bentayga or Range Rover owners will be accustomed to, and the Aston's interior isn't quite a match for the best in class. The lack of a hybrid powertrain option will also limit the car's appeal for some, but none of that is enough to stop this from being one of the most appealing luxury SUVs on sale. It arrives not a moment too soon for struggling Aston Martin.